Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam the Root. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination. We got the best, the bust, and the sleeper wide receiver episode for you guys here today. Continuing on this series as we are in the nitty-gritty officially of redraft season. I mean, September 7th is like 2 weeks away. This weekend, next weekend, leading up all the way to Thursday, all the way up until the kickoff for the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone's going to be going crazy drafting. So we have to get everybody ready. And the wide receiver episode is one of the biggest episodes that we typically do. Oh, by the way, I'm your host, Dan Mater. Of course, we got Chase Thornton in the building. Adam LaRue is off on a work trip. I know, lame, whatever. But it's okay because we have a great guest to take his place, and we got to introduce him now. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, he's the youngest and the best from the football guys, the one, the only, Hutch Brown. What's up, buddy?
Yo, that was pretty good. The moment of silence after that, just like, what's up, buddy? That was perfect. That was perfect.
You had to pause for applause.
Yeah, so good to be here, guys. Thank you all so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's definitely been a long time coming. We hooked up during the Expo, and I was not going to let you get away without getting you on a show this season. Finally, that's a great time, the Expo. By the way, if you guys are wondering, the Expo is going to be a couple weeks earlier, actually, next year, the last week of July. Show up. Like, Hutch is there. We're there. Everybody's everywhere. Like, you just want fantasy football, that's the time to do it. Come on down. We'll set you guys up real nicely. All right, so we do have a lot to talk about. I don't want to waste too much time. So again, this is the best, the bust, and the sleeper wide receivers. We have our top fives, and we always put this in the outline beforehand, right? And I want to see what the conversations that we're going to have take place. The one conversation that I don't think we need to have is Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. We all have them as our top three. Chase is a little weird with the whole, like, I have Jefferson number 2 instead of Lamb, where me and Hutch have, 1, 2, and 3. We have the right 1, 2, and 3 on like Chase over here. But whatever 3 that you want, that's completely fine. I do want to get into one conversation, though, because Hutch, you have Nico Collins as your number 4 wide receiver overall. We don't have him in our top 5. I'm very intrigued to see where your stance is, why he cracks the top 5 in your rankings.
So, yeah, when you look at Nico Collins, he cracks the top 5 for me because he is going to be a dominator of a target share in this offense with C.J. Stroud. Him and Stroud clearly have a great relationship. When you look at Collins before his injury last year, he was on pace for 2,000 receiving yards. And that's not a joke. You can look that up last season. He was on pace for 2,000 plus receiving yards before that injury. Then he came back, wasn't fully the same off that injury. He came back a little early, and he was still great, but not the same Nico Collins we saw in the first half of the season. I mean, as long as this guy is healthy, he is like a 6'3", 6'4", 200-plus pound wide receiver that is electric fast. He can make plays at every range of the field. And this offseason, the Texans have replaced Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, who's probably going to miss this entire season due to injury, with 2 day 2 rookies and a journeyman NFL wide receiver, Christian Kirk, who's been on a few teams now. He's been traveling across the league last couple of years. Like, I would say that's less competition compared to what Tank Dell as a talent when he's healthy and Stephon Diggs when he's healthy can do. So I'm looking at Nico Collins as a guy who's going to be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for C.J. Stroud in what should be a very productive offense. And we know the type of yards after catch ability, the type of deep play ability that Collins has and the red zone threat that he presents. I think he could absolutely be a top 5 receiver this year. And when you look after Chase, Lamb, and Jefferson, there are so many receivers after that you could put in any order, and I would totally agree with you. Like, I could totally see it. Like, I'm looking at both your lists, Chase and Dan, right now. I'm like, yep, I could totally see that. That's totally fair. Like, this first tier, couple tiers of wide receivers is a big tier where it's like, they're a big group of great players that you can put a lot of different orders, and I'd be cool with it. So, but Nico Collins just cream of the crop for me because if he's healthy, that dude's going to be a monster.
Yeah, there really is not a ton of separation once you get outside those top 3. That's why I mentioned top three right there. And you're absolutely right. Nico was on a tear of a pace. Here's the one thing I'm going to throw at you. He has not been able to finish a full season at any point in his career. I think that's the downfall of it. To your point, though, target share could be out the wazoo because of what they replaced Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs with, and he was still on that pace while those two were still healthy. So 100% there. But any concerns with that part of it?
Yeah, the injury concern is definitely there, and it's definitely something you have to consider in your fantasy football drafts. But honestly, like with a player like Nico, it's just, and the players at the top of the draft, really, you just got to take your shots because these guys are getting huge workloads. These guys are getting an immense amount of volume, especially the running back position. There's going to be injuries at the top. It's that simple. You're going to have guys that bust because they tear their ACL week 2, or they just have a really bad hit and they get a shoulder injury. And these guys are just taking so many hits week after week after week. And some of them get injured more often than others. That's true. Nico, to your point, has not been able to play a full season yet. But I just think with all these guys, you're taking a big risk of injury because of how many touches they're getting. So I kind of ignore injuries almost when I'm ranking these guys, especially at the top.
Full disclosure, I have Nico Collins, my wide receiver 8. So I'm not all that far behind you.
Yeah, we're right there. We're right in the same tier.
So here's another guy. Now, Hutch and Chase both have this player, Malik Nabers, in their top 5. I do not. And I think I kind of have an argument as to why I don't have him. Now, again, full disclosure, I have him at 10. I'm not getting crazy here. But Chase, why don't you take this away? Because you got him at number 4. So you have him a spot higher than Hutch does. Why are you so confident that he's definitely a top 5 wide receiver?
Well, we're talking about a guy that was already the wide receiver 7 overall last season. He was wide receiver 7 or 8 points per game, depending on whether you want to count Chris Godwin and his 7 games of absolute through the roof, production in front of him or not. But so he's already right there on the doorstep after his, freshman season, call it his freshman season. This is a guy that he was 3rd in the league in receptions with 109. He was 2nd in the league in targets with 170. 1,204 yards. That was 7th in the league. He scored 7 touchdowns. And I look at what's going on this season, and there's nothing appreciably different with that pass group, with that pass core. He still has the same people playing across from him, playing with him in personnel groupings. The backfield, okay, Cam Scatterbo comes in, but passing down wise, are we really going to see anything a whole lot different than what we saw last year between Tracy and Singletary? I don't think we do. The one big difference that they do have is that they're going to have a new quarterback or 3 throwing to them this season, as opposed to the 4 that they had throwing to them last season. But if you look what he did last season. I just rattled off his numbers with you. And last season he was catching balls from Danny Dimes, who I know is one of your favorites, Dan, the new starter in Indianapolis, by the way. And then also Drew Lock, who has flamed out in just about everywhere he's been so far in the pros. We're talking about Tim Boyle, ex-3rd stringer from Green Bay, that threw him some passes. And then Tommy DeVito threw him some passes as well last year.
Tommy Chicklets. Call him by the right name. Tommy Chicklets. It's not Cutlets. You're not cutting off. Chicklets.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disrespect the man like that. I've seen his family on film, so on tape. So, but no, listen, do we really think that this year's combination of Russell Wilson, some combination of Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and probably at some point Jackson Dart is going to be any worse than what we saw from that group last year? And he already put up almost a top 5 season with that group last year. I think that, with another year underneath his belt, I think he's going to be just fine. If you look at his reception perception numbers from Mr. Matt Harmon over there, he wins on his routes. He wins on every type of route that he runs. He beats man consistently. He's very good against man there. And as the year went on, he improved against zone coverage to the point where he's not, there's not really a hole right now in his game, in my opinion. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are on the hot seat. This team needs to win. Nabers is their best weapon. I think that means they go through him. So I'm psyched up about Nabers. And I've got some questions about some of the guys that maybe ranked ahead of him last year, or you could rank ahead of him this year. As Hutch made the point, just now, there's a big tier here, and there's ways to shuffle and ways to argue for all of them. When I look at the arguments, I see Nabers in the top 5.
Okay. So I'm going to try to push back, and then I'm going to let Hutch rebuttal because I know he agrees with Chase. This has nothing to do, my ranking of having a 10, not in the top 5, has nothing to do with Malik Nabers. Absolutely nothing. I know he's got the toe, the shoulder, and all that injury stuff going on. I could point that out. Ultimately, I'm not really worried about that. while you can make the argument, and I wouldn't argue with you, that Russell Wilson is a better quarterback, the NFL quarterback that is, than a Daniel Jones and all the hosh posh that the Giants tried to throw out after Daniel Jones went over to the Minnesota Vikings. I wouldn't argue with you about that, but I do push back on the idea a little bit that Russell Wilson, for fantasy purposes, is actually better for Malik Nabers than Jalen Jones was. So remember, the first 10 weeks with Jones, he was wide receiver 5. So he was on his way to finishing higher than what he wound up doing with Jones in there. And he was on pace for nearly 200 targets. We're talking about like 199.8. Basically, 200 targets was what his season pace was with Daniel Jones. Because what I can consistently expect out of Jones to do is to target the middle of the field within 7 to 10 yards over and over and over and over again. That's why Wan'Dale Robinson has 140 targets and nobody knew about it until the season was over. Like, it's the same thing. He's going to target that section of the field. He's not going to target necessarily outside. He's not going to push the ball deep beyond the numbers. It's not his game. And Brian Dable is all too happy to have Malik Nabers line up and run all those patterns and everything like that. It's fantastic. Russell Wilson comes in. That's not his game. He wants to push the ball to the outside. I do think Darius Slayton is going to be a little bit more involved than what we saw with Daniel Jones. Now, I'm not saying it takes away a huge target share from Malik Nabers. Don't get me twisted. But I also don't know, does Wilson really have the ability to get a top 20 wide receiver going anymore? Like, last time he had a 20th ranked wide receiver was 2022. Since then, Cortland Sutton was wide receiver 36 in 2023. George Pickens was wide receiver 30 in week 7 to 18 when he started last season. And both of those guys were jump ball, X-perimeter, wide receivers. And that's the only one he got the ball to. You can make the argument the only 2 receivers to get the ball to on the respective teams. I wouldn't argue with you there. But at the same time, that's what he does. He was second last year in deep ball completion. But overall, he doesn't push the ball down the field as much as he used to. Like, last year was 7.4 yards per attempt, 7.9 ADOT. The year was an improvement, believe it or not, in the other Arthur Smith offense than what we saw in Denver, because it was 6.9 and 7 the year before. I mean, like, he was barely getting the ball past the line of scrimmage the year before that. So I just think it's a little bit interesting. I also think the volume is interesting. Daniel Jones averaged 34 pass attempts a game last season. Russell Wilson hasn't been above 32 since 2020. Like, he comes in and the coaching staff decides, we don't want you to throw the ball a ton. That's what they wound up finding out. Now, maybe Russell Wilson's not the starter all year. I would not be surprised we see Jackson Dart at some point. I'd be a little bit surprised if we saw Jameis Winston. I do think it's going to go right from Russell Wilson to Jackson Dart. I don't know if Winston really gets a crack unless there's an injury. But I do think with the Giants defense improving and Russell Wilson being the quarterback, I think we're going to see a little less passing volume. I think you're going to see Darius Slayton involved a little bit more. And I think it's just enough for a tier that's tight that he winds up falling more towards 10 if you're drafting in the top 5. Also, I'll add this on to finish off my point. The Giants got a rough schedule for wide receivers. It's 21st schedule ranking for the wide receiver position heading this year for fantasy. I don't know. Hutch, you got anything to rebuttal on that?
Yeah, a couple of things I would want to add. I mean, I think the argument made about the deep passes, I think that's actually going to be really good for Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers is plenty willing to work downfield. He showed to be a 50-50 ball monster last year. He's happy to run those deep routes. And all you've seen in practice reports, all you've seen in the highlights, all you've seen in camp, Russell Wilson's just throwing moon balls to Malik Nabers all practice long. That's all we've seen. Like, every highlight coming out of the Giants camp right now is Malik Nabers getting a moon ball downfield. And we saw last year, obviously didn't always work with Pickens because, you know, I honestly think Pickens isn't that talented of a wide receiver. I think he can do some big plays, but as a consistent wide receiver 1, I just don't think it's very much there. And you saw it last year where George Pickens was getting constant targets downfield. When you look at Russell Wilson when he played, he was a top 5 quarterback in terms of 20-plus yard attempt rate. Like, that dude was just chucking the football downfield, and he was happy to throw it downfield to George Pickens no matter what the coverage was. And I see similar things happen for Malik Nabers. When you look at his ability to work downfield, I think we're going to see so many big plays. And like Chase was arguing, he's the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on that team. There is literally no one else that's going to compete with him. I understand Darius Slayton can work downfield, but this is Darius Slayton, man. Malik Nabers is on a different level, and I think we're going to see consistent targets for him downfield. But yeah, and honestly, something else I'd add too, you know, you want to highlight Malik Nabers' talents. You guys were talking about some season-long paces. He had a concussion in week 4, and that definitely impacted his play, or week 5 it was, and that definitely impacted his play the rest of the season. You saw some times where he didn't look as well. You look at those first 4 weeks when he was playing, His pace was 221 targets, 149 receptions, 1,641 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Like, the dude is monstrously talented. And I think it's going to work enough with Russ. And if Russ gets benched and we see Jameis playing, that's a whole different level of fun. Jameis will send it to him every play. His 20-plus yard pass rate will be like 100%.
Yeah, if Jameis plays, throw everything I said out the window. I'm kind of more basing it on the idea that I don't think Jameis is going to get that opportunity again unless there's an injury. I think they're going to go right to Jackson Dart. But yeah, if he plays...
I would agree most likely they go to Jackson Dart next. He's been playing really well in preseason. He's been flashing. I would expect they would go that way as well, but there's always a chance.
And I can't argue with you on the whole Wilson not necessarily being great for fantasy wide receivers. But I mean, like I said, they have to win. They're going to have to throw the ball at some point, whether it's Russell or whether it's Jackson Dart. Malik Nabers, of the top 12 guys last year, top 12 wide receivers in yardage, only one of those 12 saw a lower percentage of catchable balls among his targets than Malik Nabers did. Not even 70% of the balls thrown his way were even catchable. Okay. And he still put up that kind of a year. I think that whether it's Wilson, who has been a more accurate passer than anybody else that we've looked at on that list in his pro career, or whether it's Jackson Dart, who got better every year in terms of his accuracy in college to the point where he was a 69% passer last season. I just don't think it's a stretch to say that he should see a much higher percentage of catchable balls this year among the targets that do go to him. And I don't think his volume takes as big a hit maybe as what you're thinking it does there, Dan. So I'm still comfortable taking him where I want to take.
And yeah, I know we've been talking about Malik Nabers for 10 minutes, but one thing I want to add to you about the George Pickens conversation, I think that wide receiver 30 mark is a little flawed because when you look at what he did actually, when you look at from the bye week on, Russell Wilson played like 1 week in week 9, and then you go to the bye week 10, week 10 through 13. George Pickens was averaging wide receiver 1 level numbers. He was about like 16 points per game. And then he got hurt. And then he came back with like the last 1 or 2 games of the season and didn't play like himself. And that really tanked his points per game numbers. So when you looked at him when he was healthy with Russ as a starting quarterback, I know it's only 4 games, that dude was really good for fantasy. I think the injuries and when he came back early, and that really hurt him in terms of his points per game at the end of the season there. So I think that wide receiver 30 mark would be a lot better if he hadn't got hurt. Already back by that as well.
Yeah, no, all fair points. We'll see. He did have Cortland Sutton and still couldn't get him past 36, and Sutton was healthy with him all season long too. But we'll see. Yeah. Different offense, different time, different type of wide receiver. I do want to talk about somebody that Chase and I have in our top 5 that Hutch, you do not. So we have Drake London in our top 5, and I am all about Drake London this year. So I'll get you in there. Chase, if you have anything rebuttal coming on afterwards. But I just don't think we've seen the best of Drake London. The guy's turning 24 years old. Like, he's literally just kind of entering his prime, kind of like Hutch over here, which is kind of scary to think about. And then on top of it, like, you look at all these different metrics for wide receivers that we've come to find are predictive for these guys year over year, especially when they're about to enter their prime. And he just hits everywhere you want him to hit, right? He was 3rd in first read percentage. He was 8th in first downs per route run. There's just a lot of meat left on the table. Like, fantasy points per route run was 0.46. His expected fantasy points per route run was supposed to be 0.56. That would have made him the wide receiver 6 last year. And that's with dealing with a Kirk Cousins who can't throw the ball anymore with no shoulder left. Like, that's what we're talking about here. Because remember, he only had 3 games with Michael Penix. And when we talk about what he did with Michael Penix, like, I can mention the insane 39% target share, I guess. He's not going to do that throughout an entire season. So that's almost
1,900 plus receiving yard pace too.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not going to get a 39% target share throughout the entire year. At least I don't think he's going to anyway. Darnell Mooney getting hurt definitely make it more interesting though. Is a small sample, but what I will take out of that I do think could play out throughout this entire season was that you saw his ADOT rise to over from 10.6 to 12.9 in those 3 games. The big plays are going to be there. I've talked about this throughout the offseason that Michael Penix, to me, he seems like Jameis Winston without the turnovers. Like, he's going to take the shots down the field. That's what I'm looking at. That's great things for wide receivers. He played a really similar, Drake London, played a really similar role to Puka Nacua in that Rams offense. Remember, Zach Robinson, that's the type of offense that they're running here, where he's kind of like 62% routes outside, 37% from the slot. When you get that mixture, you don't have to worry about matchups. You become matchup proof because now you're getting moved around the formation. You're not going to get lined up on a premier corner week in and week out at any point in time. So he finished last year as the wide receiver 5 in total points. I get that. It was wide receiver 14 in points per game. But when you add all those things up and add up the fact that he is just entering his prime, I think Drake London winds up being a top 5 wide receiver. So Hutch, what do you think? Because you don't have him in the top 5.
Yeah, I have him at 7. Like, he's right there. Like, he's again, it's the same argument that I made earlier. Of like, it's a giant tier of wide receivers, and you can jumble them any way you want. And I'm totally happy with it, and that's just how it happened here a little bit. The only thing I'd rebuttal back, I mean, I think Michael Penix can be very, very good, but when I look at the quarterback situations of all the other receivers I have in front of them, they feel a little bit more secure. And as a result, or they feel, or so, the only one I'd argue is Justin Jefferson that might not be secure, but he's Justin Jefferson. It's a little bit of a different player there with Jefferson. But with London, it's like Michael Penix Jr. Yeah, we saw him 3 games. He looked all right. Had a couple shootouts in that time in those 3 games. But is he really the real deal? Is he really going to be able to elevate this offense to a different level than Kirk Cousins was? And I do think he can do it. And that's why I have Drake London ranked pretty highly. If I didn't think that at all, I'd have Drake London ranked a little lower. But I do think Michael Penix did do it. And I do think we're going to see a very good season from Drake London. It's just there's a slightly a bit more confidence in the quarterback and the offense for other players I've ranked in front of him. That's what pushed him to wide receiver 7 instead of like wide receiver 4 or 5.
Okay, I like it. Chase, do you have anything real quick to add?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point there too. But like, I just want to say, like, I mean, Drake London, yeah, you mentioned those 3 games that he had with Penix, and yeah, he's not going to average a 1,900-yard pace, but his targets per game did increase with Penix in there from 8.5 per game on average for the first 14 weeks to 13 per game with Michael Penix. He also increased his points per target in that playing time too with those 3 games. So, I mean, you're talking about he's going to skyrocket, I think, in terms of what he is able to do with the looks that he gets. That one player that had a worse completion or a percentage of catchable balls thrown his way in the top 12 receivers, by the way, was Mr. Drake London. And I expect that to improve this year as well. I think he's going to see more catchable targets than he did last season, a higher percentage of them anyway. I love everything about the idea of Drake London being a number 1 guy. And finally, like you said, showing what he's fully capable of instead of being held back by Arthur Smith and company like he has been the last couple of years.
All right, so we do have a debate that's going to transition us from our top 5 to our bust 5. So let's hit it. So I have Amon-Ra St. Brown in my top 5. I got him at number 4. Hutch blew my mind and put him in his bust list. 1.
Yes.
So guests go first. Why is Amon-Ra St. Brown a bust according to his ADP?
So, yeah, I think it's more ADP for me. I have him ranked as a wide receiver 1 as a top 12 player, but he's right on the end of that wide receiver 1 range. And I have him ranked a little lower compared to consensus, and I call him a bust. And the thing is, when you hear bust, you're often going to think, oh, he's completely going to kill you. I just think that when you draft him, you're going to be disappointed. I think you're going to draft him really high in that high first round range, and he's going to finish as a low wide receiver 1. You're just going to kind of feel a little burnt. Like how we were drafting Bijan his rookie season. We were drafting him as a top 3 running back. He came out, finished at RB9, and everyone wanted to burn him at the stake because it was like, what the heck happened, guys? He was supposed to be everything, and he just wasn't. And I just think Amon-Ra St. Brown, this is the kind of season we're going to see for him. And it's not because of him as a talent. He's a fantastic player. I am really high on Jameson Williams this year. I think when you look at Jameson Williams as a player, as a prospect, and what he could do in this season, I think he could legit lead this team in receiving yards this season over Amon-Ra St. Brown. And here's why. When you look at Jameson Williams as a physical athlete, he's faster than Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's more explosive than St. Brown. He has abilities to work downfield that St. Brown simply does not. He has the speed, the ability after the catch that St. Brown simply doesn't. The physical tools, when you look at that overall, it favors Jameson Williams. There's no major argument against that. Jameson Williams' talent and speed and athleticism is just beyond human. There's a reason he was drafted like top 12 in the draft back a couple of years ago. He was an elite talent. And now when you look at the mental abilities, the football IQ, that's where Amon-Ra St. Brown's been winning the last couple of years. He knows exactly where he needs to be to get the football. He knows exactly how to run every route on the field. And he just knows how to play the game of football as a wide receiver. And Jameson Williams over the last couple of years, even though he's dealt with injuries, that ACL tear that he had when he was drafted, that suspension, a couple suspensions that he's had with the gambling issues, but now he was back in the second half of last season. Obviously, Detroit had to pass more because their defense was really injured and falling apart. So that obviously led to an increase in targets for Jameson Williams. But Jameson Williams really stepped up to the plate. When you look at his route tree, it was, look at different charts and look at his ability getting separation on every route. His route tree was so advanced last year. He was running every single route to perfection. In zone coverage and man coverage, he knew exactly where he needed to be to get the football. He ran routes perfectly, know exactly where Jared Goff needed to go with it. And he seemed to develop that football IQ that Amon-Ra St. Brown has. And now when you look at it, if he already has the physical tools, now he has those mental tools and the football IQ, he could end up being a better player than Amon-Ra St. Brown. St. Brown was drafted as a day 3 pick. Jameson Williams was drafted top 12. He was destined to be a better player. And now, after a few years of dealing with the injuries, dealing with suspensions, we could get there this year. The coaching staff last year was all hyping up Jameson Williams. Like, he's going to be the breakout player of our offense. He's going to break out this year. This is the year for JMO. This is it for him. And now he broke out last year, right? And now all we see from the coaching staff right now, the new offensive coordinator is Dan Campbell. Everybody's saying JMO's going to break out this year. He already had 1,000 yards last year. There's plenty of room for more ceiling here for JMO. All the camp reports have been very, very ecstatic about him. And when you look at the new offensive coaching staff, obviously we know Ben Johnson favors the slot really heavily. He talked about it to the media. He's talked about it to the media ever since he became the Bears head coach, that he loves the slot position. There's a reason he handpicked Luther Burden in the second round of the draft. He is perfect for that slot role. And now you look at new offensive coordinator. Those coordinators do not have the same favorability to the slot that Ben Johnson did. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple dinks of targets from Amon-Ra St. Brown and going more toward Jameson Williams on the outside. I mean, we already saw it for St. Brown last year. He dipped, 2 targets per game compared to his peak just a year ago. Like, it's there for Jameson Williams to break out, take over as potentially the 1A of this offense next to Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Well, he did, but he didn't dip in his position. Like, he still finished as a wide receiver 3 overall, yes, even with left. Because here's the thing about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm going to get to your JMO point because it blows my mind, because I think we're on the same exact page as JMO. I just think both these guys can eat at the level that they're going for. But with Amon-Ra St. Brown, even though he's a smaller type of guy and he's not the fastest type of guy, because he's such a physical route runner, he gets separation in the red zone. I mean, the guy he had 5 of his 12 touchdowns last season came in the end zone targets. So the guy gets separation, even though he's not the bigger body. He's not the prototype guy that you typically think of in that situation, because he can just get open, because he already is that nuanced route runner. And he's gotten double-digit touchdowns, by the way, the last 2 seasons. So he didn't need Jared Goff to throw 40-plus touchdowns in order for him to get his double-digit touchdowns as well. And that's a great equalizer when you're talking about a guy like St. Brown. His target share is elite. All right, we already know that. Like, he's going to be. I still think he's going to be the number 1 target on this team when it's all said and done. It wouldn't surprise me if JMO, because of his explosive ability, if he's close, gets him out in yards with the bigger plays, 100%. But here's the other flip side of this. The Lions were the 3rd team in rush attempts last year and 16th in pass attempts. They have a much tougher schedule. They have Johnny Morton, who's coming over as a passing game coordinator. By the way, I have a lot of doubts about Johnny Morton as far as his versatility and creativity. But what I don't doubt is that he's going to come in with a pass-first mindset. I think we're going to see more balance between that rushing and passing game, which means more volume for both St. Brown and Jameson Williams to eat. Like, I have Jameson Williams in my top 20. Like, you're going to get no argument from me with that. Amon-Ra St. Brown is as dependable of the guys they come. He's the closest thing that I've seen to Cooper Kupp, like being able to play that role inside out, yet I'm still a touchdown maker, yet I still always get open because I can just beat guys off the man because I had those physical skill set of hands. Like, his hands are ridiculous. You can't jam the guy. They even had the scrimmages in with the Dolphins. I know it's the Dolphins, take it for what it's worth, but they're like, you couldn't cover St. Brown. He was everywhere. So clearly he's over the knee injury and all that stuff that was going on in the offseason, that we don't have to worry about that anymore. And just to cap off his target separation, he was 15th in the entire league in target separation. And despite being a bigger body, despite not having, 4.4 speed, he has more like 4.6 speed, and he's still able to get open consistently. Like, this is a guy who has, talk about that IQ, who knows how to get everywhere. That's this guy. So I think both these guys can eat. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been a top 5 receiver the last 2 years with a team that was run first. And I do think that's going to mesh a little bit more. I think there's going to be more volume actually in the pass game for this offense. The guy who I'm more worried about getting left out, and this will be for next week's episode, is Sam Laporta.
Yeah, that's a big one, yeah.
So Chase, we debated. What do you think?
Oh, good arguments on both sides. Listen, Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of those guys that is ranked ahead of or is going ahead of Malik Nabers that I do have questions about, because I do have questions about what this offense is going to look like with Ben Johnson. I do have questions about, how much of the workload does go to Jameson Williams. I can't say that I'm fully on board with you there, Hutch, that Jameson Williams has what it takes to be the number one in this offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a football fan,
just to be fair.
I'm a Packers fan. Yeah. And I have to see this dude twice a year at least. Dude's dad was a bodybuilder. He grew up in the gym and he's just a gamer. He's a baller. The dude knows football. Like Dan was saying, he gets open. I'm closer to having him in my top 5 than I am to having him out of the top 5. But where I do agree with you there, Hutch, is the idea that he's going in the first round as wide receiver 4. And like you said, when I look at busts in terms of, will they live up to their draft capital? And there are other guys late in that first round, in that second half of that first round. I have the number 8 pick in one of my home leagues here. I probably won't be pulling the trigger on Amon-Ra St. Brown just because I have too many questions about what that offense will still look like. I will say though, Dan, your point about the idea that they're going to have to throw more because they've got a tougher schedule. And I made the point with Malik Nabers. He's the best weapon on that team. I don't know if the best weapon on that team is Jahmyr Gibbs or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think there's an argument to be made for both of them on that. So the pass game still goes through Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm probably a little closer to Dan on this one, but I agree completely with your point, Hutch, that I don't know that he lives up to first round, second half of the first round draft capital wide receiver 4 quite this year.
Sorry, Hutch. Chase didn't get the memo. You're always supposed to side with the guest no matter what. Anyway, so let's.
It's totally fair. I get it. I'm making a really strong projection with Jameson Williams. I just see the big step this year, and I see him forcing himself a lot more targets. And as a result, something has to give in this offense. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown might dip a couple targets.
Honestly, I think you guys both are a little higher on Jameson Williams than I am. That was full disclosure there. So I will put that out there as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this bus conversation. We got to pick up the pace a little bit. So Chase, you got Xavier Worthy as your number 1 bust. I got to hear this, man. What's going on?
Well, listen, I think this is a case of, in fantasy, a lot of people, don't have a whole ton of historic hindsight, and they're always looking at what have you done for me lately. Xavier Worthy, even after Rashee Rice went down, Xavier Worthy didn't necessarily pick up the slack until really late in the season in terms of becoming a go-to option or the go-to option in that offense. Okay. And then listen, he did see 31 targets in weeks 15 through 17 during the fantasy playoffs when everybody's paying attention. Of course, we all remember that. Oh, he won me a championship. He was 21 out of 31, 190 yards, 2 scores. It was awesome. He scored you 52.5 fantasy points in those 3 weeks. And then we all know what happened in the playoffs there. He had the awesome Super Bowl. I will tell you again, though, I will remind you that his awesome Super Bowl literally all came in garbage time, but he was 8 out of 8 in that game. He scored 2 touchdowns. He had the long 50-yarder. It's just, it doesn't necessarily profile out to a guy. When I look at Xavier Worthy, he doesn't profile out to a guy who's going to be a number 1 or even a number 2 type receiver. I think I see him as a much more of a wide receiver 3 type. And I want to tell you why here. We all know that he's little. Okay. He doesn't have size. He's not going to be able to win against man coverage. Okay. And on top of that, he doesn't run the slant. He doesn't run a curl. He doesn't run those comeback routes. He doesn't run those number 1 type of wide receiver, routes. Okay. You have to scheme him open. Now, if there's anybody in the league who's going to be able to scheme a guy open, it's going to be Andy Reid. Okay. But for a guy who is super fast, who we all thought was going to just be able to outrun everybody, on the field and be a deep threat, he didn't have any games over 80 yards last season in the regular season. He only had 2 games of over 10 plus targets. And his longest reception, he had a 35-yarder week 1. He had a 54-yarder in week 5. After that, his longest reception for the entire season was a 31-yarder. He's not necessarily, they're not necessarily getting him those looks where he's just going to outrun everybody and, F it. Xavier's down there somewhere, chuck it like Kyler Murray might be doing. They're going to spread the ball around still. That's what Patrick Mahomes does. He's going to spread the ball around enough that I think it's going to hold back Xavier Worthy. If it was Rashee Rice for a full season, I like the idea of Rashee Rice being able to still soak up targets there. I think Travis Kelce is on the decline as a tight end. We do know that Rashee Rice is going to miss some time. We all assume he's going to miss some time this. We don't know how much time he's going to miss. And if you haven't seen, like, say, Drew Davenport has been covering this on X. He's been kind of revisiting it every couple of days here on X, and he had a great write-up about it yesterday on there, talking about the idea that he may not miss as much time as I think we all think he might miss. He's not going to get a 10-game persistent look like that. It looks like it might be closer to an early year suspension, and it might be closer to 5 or 6 games. Xavier Worthy is not going to be the number one target on that team, especially after Rashee Rice comes back. So I'm worried that we're taking Xavier Worthy as you're drafting him like he's a sleeper wide receiver 2, and you're getting great value on him. And I'm worried that he's much more of a volatile wide receiver 3, if that, when everything is said and done here. That's why I've got him on my bust here. Guys that are going after him that I would much rather have, Tedero McMillan. Honestly, I'd rather have Calvin Ridley. Jaylen Waddle is going after him, and I'm much bigger on Jaylen Waddle than I would be on Xavier Worthy this season. And even, I know you don't necessarily agree with this, Dan, but Jerry Jeudy, I would take, who's going after Xavier Worthy, and I would take him before them, because I think that the consistent volume is going to be there for him. That's my Xavier Worthy take.
You have fun with Jerry Jeudy on that one. I don't even know when we're going to get to him on this show.
I was taking him. I said I would rather have him than Worthy, and I won't be taking either one of them.
Full disclosure, Xavier Worthy is my wide receiver 18, so I'm in the totally opposite. Opposite.
I'm high, I think I'm a tad higher than you. I think I'm like wide receiver 16. I'm right there with you.
Oh, Hutch! I didn't think anybody was gonna be higher than me than wide receiver 18.
I'm right there with you.
So go ahead, Hutch. Take it away then.
Yeah, man. I think I love Xavier Worthy personally. I think when you looked at him as a prospect, I think he was a phenomenal prospect. Obviously, a little small. But when you look at his abilities as a wide receiver, he ran every route really, really well. He got open at an elite level. And when you look at his ability to be a wide receiver 1 in the clear majority of his games, he was 5+ catches for Texas, including his competition with Adonai Mitchell, where that's a legit competition as a wide receiver 2. He was able to command a real target share in that offense and consistently be very, very involved. And when you look at what he did last year, obviously 15 through 17, yes, that's great. But you'll even look before that, like from week 10, 11 on, he was consistently getting much more involved. And you consistently see this with these wide receivers in the second half. They really start to blossom. We saw it with not former Chiefs receiver, but the Chiefs receiver right now, Rashee Rice. We saw that in the second half of the season where Travis Kelce really started to dip a little bit and they needed help. Rashee Rice really started to blossom in those last 6 to 8 weeks of the season. And now Rashee Rice had a massive breakout last year before his injury. He was looking like going to be a wide receiver 1. Same thing we saw for Worthy. And we're looking at him in his second season. He's very versatile. He can be used downfield. Obviously, he's got that really good speed. You can put him in screens. You can put him in jet sweeps. Chiefs already used that last year, earlier as a gadget guy. And you can put him everywhere on the field. You can put him in the slot. You can put him outside. And you can make him run every single route because he has the speed, the footwork, and the ability to get open on any route you put him on. Obviously, Rashee Rice will definitely compete for the number 1 target share. When you look at Travis Kelce, I think we're starting to see the beginning of the end for him. We started to see it last year. He's still going to absorb a target share. But Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. This should be a very productive offense. There should be plenty of room for multiple wide receivers to be fantasy football relevant. So Xavier Worthy, when you look at him, I think that we're going to see a big breakout in year 2. Obviously, as he steps forward in year 2, as he gets more developed in this offense, I think we see a big breakout in year 2. I'm in for Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, just to point out that rookie wide receivers never do well with Andy Reid. And yet he's had 2 back-to-back that all of a sudden had second half seasons where they just went Donkey Kong. And Chase, if you remember back to our quarterback episode, I was the one who had Patrick Mahomes in the top 5. There was a reason for that. It's because I believe in that offense getting back to being explosive again. It's been a big emphasis point. Xavier Worthy is a big factor in that offense getting explosive again. All right. So here's what I want to do. I want to fast forward a little bit. I want to get right into our Matthew Golden conversation, our Matthew Golden debate. So here's the deal. Hutch has got Matthew Golden as his number 2 bust on his board. And I have him as my number 1 sleeper. So we're going to face off again to figure out how we're going to do this. As usual, guests first. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Matthew Golden, when you look at him, for me, I just don't think he has the ability to be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. I really just don't. When you look at, I was actually going to make a comparison to him when talking about Xavier Worthy. When you look at Matthew Golden in his college games, 1, never hit a 1,000-yard season. When you look at first-round wide receivers that never hit a 1,000-yard season, it's a scary list. I'm just going to warn you. You can go look it up yourself. It's a scary list of players. It is not a list of players you want to be on. There's a lot of first-round bust wide receivers on that list, and Matthew Golden fits right there in one of them. And when you look at his production in college, he was very inconsistent. There were games where it's like 2 for 12, 1 for 5, like completely vanished. There were games where he just was completely schemed out, completely vanished from the offense, not involved. That's not something you like to see from a wide receiver one, because when you see that at the collegiate level, there's no way you're going to see him step up and be a dominant wide receiver one at the NFL level against NFL talent with NFL competition around him. If he's not able to establish that pure number one wide receiver role away from Isaiah Bond in college, what is he going to do in the NFL level? And you have some legit competition here with Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, Ontavian Wicks. There's some players that can earn solid target shares. I just don't see Matthew Golden separating himself. So I don't see him as terrible valued as price right now, because he's going as like a wide receiver 3. I just don't see a world where he is stepping so far above that he's worth this prick right now. I think he's going to be a place where sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not good on a week-to-week basis, but overall you're just going to be frustrated and not know when to start him.
So here's what's interesting to me, Hutch. I was totally where you were back in April. I was exactly where you were back in April, because all the data screams not for Matthew Golden. Everything about not being able to fully take. He did start to take over for Isaiah Bond towards the end of the season as the number one target over there.
Bond got hurt.
Right, exactly. Bond got hurt, and it was still kind of iffy even then. 100%. Still seemed to have a limited route tree with a limited ability, like a one-trick pony type of situation. Totally agree with you on that point as well. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, and I don't know what ADP you're necessarily working off of, but he's not going as a wide receiver 3. He's going as a wide receiver 4. Right now, his ADP is at wide receiver 43 is what I'm sitting at.
Okay, I thought he was a little higher than that. Okay.
And I have him ranked at wide receiver 31. So if he was going as a wide receiver 3, I wouldn't even be having this conversation with you right now. And while I don't think dynasty-wise, like we're thinking long-term, if Adam was here, I don't think Matthew Golden's the number one wide receiver for many years to come. But this year, there's a pathway. Romeo Doubs just got back from injury. Jaden Reed is still hurt. Ontavian Wicks is just working back in limited individual drills, I believe. I think is this week is finally when he came back. During that time where all those guys were missing, Matthew Golden's been the only one who's consistently stayed healthy. And where I started to take him a little bit more consideration, every single day he was making a big play. Here's one thing I look for rookie wide receivers when they're not in that top echelon tier where I'm like, look, you're a stud, you're going to be great, first round draft capital, perfection. In Golden's case, where it's like, I don't think you should have been drafted where you went in the first round. I had more of a second round grade on him to begin with, but he does have the skill set to pop if he has enough of a target share as a rookie, because he does have the big playability, because he will be on the field a significant amount of time. I look at Christian Watson. I do think Matthew Golden's a better version of Christian Watson. I absolutely do. I think he's a little bit more nuanced than Christian Watson was coming out. There's a reason why Watson was the guy everybody wanted as the Packers wide receiver. Big plays, touchdowns. I see a very similar situation here for Matthew Golden, for Jordan Love, who needs to get back to being more aggressive for this offense to actually take that next step. They weren't able to do so when he got injured last season. I know he has the thumb thing. The thumb is on the non-throwing hand. I'm really not worried about it. He's supposed to be available for week one.
So fine.
So I'm not taking that into consideration at all. So when I look at Golden's ability, what his role is in that offense, the fact that there's nobody there to be an alpha wide receiver necessarily, which means I'm projecting Golden for like a 23% target share. If he has 23% target share with those big plays that he can hit, now you're talking about a top 24 receiver upside wise. I got him at 31. He's going at 43. That's why he's a sleeper to me.
You know, that's fair. I mean, the big play upside and the big play potential is there in, even on potentially limited volume, you could be good for fantasy. But I would ask you a question, because I feel like we experienced this exact same thing with Jaden Reed last year, where Jaden Reed was a big play guy. He was on the field for limited snaps because he was taken off the field a lot for 12-team personnel, because he's primarily a slot wide receiver. He made those big plays. He scored a bunch of touchdowns. He had a really fun season, about 1,000 yards. But were you happy with him for fantasy? Because more than half the time you started him, you hated it. I mean, you just hated to start him in your lineup, because he had like 4 or 5 big weeks, and the rest of his weeks you were like, what the heck are you doing, Jaden Reed? Why are you getting like 8 points in my flex spot? Like, this just isn't worth it. And I see a similar case for Matthew Golden, where if he's not going to separate himself from the rest of this receiving room, I get there's some guys hurt right now, but most reports say they're all on track for week 1. If he's not going to separate himself from this receiving core, which I just don't think he is talent-wise, I think at ceiling, you see another Jayden Reed season where he has big plays and touchdowns here and there. But again, when you look at him overall, you're just going to be disappointed for fantasy. So wide receiver 4, honestly, the ADP I was looking at said more like wide receiver 36 costs. Wide receiver 4, I'm a little bit more interested. I have him ranked like only a handful of spots below that wide receiver 43 cost. So if you're looking at like someone you're throwing on your bench and occasionally if you want to fill in a bye week and start him, hope for a big play, that's not a bad play. I just think that anyone that's thinking of him, as he's the first round wide receiver, he's going to be the clear-cut wide receiver 1, you're gonna make a mistake.
No, I agree with that, which is why I still have him ranked as a wide receiver 3. Yeah. It all depends on what your ADP is and know your platform. Here's the one thing. Jayden Reed, I think, is a different scenario, just to kind of cap that off, because I think he was meant to be more of the gimmick slot type of wide receiver. I don't think Golden's coming, and this is probably where we're different. I don't have Golden coming off in 12 personnel. I have Datavian Wicks coming.
He will be on the outside. No, Matthew Golden will be on the outside.
Matthew Golden will be playing the Z. He'll be playing the flank.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He will be. Right. He will not be slot wide receiver. That's not Matthew Golden's game. I'm just saying in terms of deep plays and touchdowns is what you're looking at, is similar to Jayden Reed.
Yeah, and with Jayden Reed, though, again, you point to the limited snaps. I don't think we're going to see the limited snaps with Golden. I think that's where we're kind of differing a little bit on that. But I do want to move this conversation along, get back in the conversation here and talk about Egbuka being one of your top sleepers.
Mm-hmm. Oof. I mean, we've had some like kind of recent news here too that's I think, unfortunately, is going to be positive for Egbuka, but not necessarily positive in the grand scheme of things with Jalen McMillan's neck injury. I mean, we're looking at a guy here in Egbuka. He profiles as a classic slot guy, okay? And he had a lot of college production in terms of, he had a lot of college production when he played, but he didn't play a whole ton. It didn't seem like year over year. So his stats don't jump off the page, but look at what he did. He was at OSU, for crying out loud, Ohio State. He had to deal with JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He had to deal with Marvin Harrison Jr. He had Garrett Wilson on the same staff. He had Chris Olave. Oh yeah, as tight ends, they had Jeremy Ruckert. They had Cade Stover. There was a lot of competition there for passing targets while Egbuka was at Ohio State. And despite that, he set the all-time school record with 205 career receptions. When you hold a career record at a school like Ohio State, it means something. Okay. Ohio State is one of those schools that means something football wise. He was part of a national champion. The dude is a winner. He's a route technician. He's a good route runner. He's a touch faster than say like Jalen McMillan is. He's quicker than J-Mac. And now he doesn't even have to necessarily worry about competing with J-Mac because of that neck injury. There's speculation. There's possibility that McMillan misses not just regular season time, but maybe a month or two of regular season time with this neck injury. There's speculation now that Godwin might miss maybe the first month of the season and may not be ready yet to come back after having a second surgery. We find out now in the off season here. So there is a path right now. I mean, Egbuka, there's no competition really to be the number 2 target on this team behind Mike Evans for him. Now, last year when Godwin went out, I know that Egbuka is a slot guy. He's a classic slot guy. He looks like it. And last year when he went out, they actually plugged Sterling Shepard into that slot and they were using McMillan more as like a flanker. I think that Egbuka can play that flanker. I think he can play the slot. I think they can switch back and forth. There was talk about Sterling Shepard actually playing more on the outside for this team this year. It doesn't matter. Egbuka is more talented than anybody else they have on that team right now outside of possibly Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is 137 years old. I like Egbuka that way. He's being taken as wide receiver 46 right now. He's going as a wide receiver 4. I think at least for the first month or two of the season, he's got wide receiver 2 upside, but I think that he has a real opportunity to establish himself in this offense as the weapon that they drafted him to be, that they want him to be going forward. I know they paid Godwin, but I think they'll be able to play some games once Godwin does come back, getting them both on the field with Mike Evans. I'm not worried about Jalen McMillan's future when he comes back healthy because I think that those two guys are the future. McMillan's the future on the outside. Yeah. McMillan's the future on the outside and Egbuka's the future on the inside. I like Egbuka to vastly outplay that number 46, wide receiver 46.
I have a feeling his ADP is going to change after this weekend.
It has to shoot up. It has to shoot up.
Wide receiver 46 ADP is not going to be accurate next week. He's going to be in the 30s for sure.
Yep. I think he still outplays that. Like I said, I think he can be a wide receiver.
Yeah. I've got him at 29 right now. I feel great about Egbuka.
No, I have him at 30 actually. Hutch, do you want to give me like a 30-second spiel on Jaylin Noel being your number one sleeper? Because this is great for my dynasty, by the way. So I'm glad you got him in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Jaylin Noel. I think the Texans made a smash pick at Iowa State here with Noel. And that's funny. They got Jaden Higgins from Iowa State as well. But I specifically love Noel because when you watch him play football, obviously he's primarily a slot wide receiver. He knows how to run every single route. He can play downfield. He can work in the intermediate range, short ranges of the field. He can run every single route you want him to. He's got that sub 4.4 speed. He can really take the top off of defense. And when you watch him after the catch, he is so explosive. I mean, when I watched him play, I just said he looks like a juiced up Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's not afraid to drop a shoulder. He's not afraid to just cut to the outside and blaze down the field. He can make all the plays you want downfield as well as in the intermediate short game, like Amon-Ra out of the slot position. And now you put him in a Houston Texans offense with a great quarterback in Xavier Stroud, who have the Texans, they have a dominant outside wide receiver who we talked about earlier, Nico Collins, who's their clear one. You need some thunder on the inside. And I think Noel is going to deliver that very, very well. You have Christian Kirk there, like we mentioned. I think a second half breakout for Jaylin Noel is very, very possible. As Kirk, who's a very solid player, I don't know if he'll be able to hold off the talent of Jaylin Noel for very long. I mean, obviously his third round pick. This could work out for Texans. It could not. Jaylin Noel might be a bust. He might be a great player. We'll see. I believe when watching him play, he's a phenomenal player. And I think if he is who I think he could be or what he showed at college, if he is that, he will quickly earn that slot role and be a dominant second half player. And
you will be able to pick him up off the waiver wire in 12 minutes.
For sure, yeah. He's going last round, like last pick in your draft, so you could easily get him.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to make this real quick and simple. Draft Ricky Pearsall. His ADP is wide receiver 43. I have him right now wide receiver 32. That's conservative. He's probably going to move up for me. Third easiest schedule for wide receivers. We don't know what Juwan Jennings is going to be coming off the calf or even the contract's going to get done. We don't know what Brandon Ayuk is going to be coming off of his ACL injury. Draft Ricky Pearsall in that round 8-9 turn right now. All right, Hutch, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Give a quick shout out. Where can we follow you at? What do you got going on?
I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you guys having me on the show. Y'all can follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at HutchinsonB_FF. You can find all my content from there. I obviously work with football guys. I'm a big contributor over there. I'll be doing a lot of stuff with them throughout the rest of this offseason and through the season as well. And then check out Hutch Coming in Clutch, my podcast. When the season comes on, we'll be going twice a week, just helping you out with all your fantasy football needs throughout the season.
Love it. Love it. Make sure you go to Operation Domination on YouTube at FF Advice Net and download us on your favorite podcast app. We'll be back next week with Stacey Perez talking about the tight ends. And then it will be just another week until kickoff for football. Guys, we'll see you again soon.